The reason I wrote this book is, well, there is no reason. History Press, who publishes a book, were reading my blog, and I did my blog for fun, and also because my friends were sick of me bringing up a Wisconsin connection to every single word they said. You know, someone could tell me, I nicked myself, you know, why are you bleeding? I cut myself with a razor. Oh, did you know King Gillette was the father of the razor? Or, did you know the weekend was invented in Wisconsin? And yes, it was. And several people were shot protesting to gain Saturday as a day off. That was invented right here. And another friend said, have you seen Inherit the Wind? It's fantastic. I said, of course it's fantastic. Both lead actors, Spencer Tracy and Frederick March, are Wisconsin boys. And no duo won more Academy Awards in the history of Academy Awards than a small group of Wisconsin actors in the 1930s. See, I'm going on, and that's different from the book. So you can tell this silly obsession of mine comes out in this book. And the last chapter is called Joe McCarthy's Last Ride, which is actually a very, very comedic journey when you read that chapter, if you read that chapter. Very surreal. But here's a short bit about the Army McCarthy hearings, and it gives you an example of why I was so annoying to my friends. From 1950 until the Army McCarthy hearings in 1954, Joe McCarthy was a force of nature. It was a time when Wisconsin's native sons and daughters seemed to dominate our nation's pop culture and political landscape. Frank Lloyd Wright was entering a final vital decade of his career. In Japan, General Douglas MacArthur, commander of all United Nations forces in Korea, was pondering a run for the presidency. Waukesha's Les Paul, the father of the solid body electric guitar, was busy inventing new sounds for the new atomic age. With his wife, Mary Ford, he ushered into the McCarthy era with a string of chart-topping hits. If Les and Mary ever felt crowded while sitting on top of the hit parade, it was Sheboygan's Chordettes who were doing the pushing. The quartet was a featured regular on Arthur Godfrey's popular TV and radio shows. The Chordettes' first major hit song, Mr. Sandman, hit #1 with a rocket and decided to stay there for a while. A second later hit, Lollipop, would become every older male baby boomer's favorite imagined dirty song. Mr. Sandman, a plea for a dream lover, has its loaded moments as well. Bring me a dream, they croon, and make sure he has lots of hair, like Liberace. Really. That's a short excerpt from Joe McCarthy's Last Ride. History Press read my blog. I don't bring up Wisconsin all the time anymore to my friends because I got it out of my system. And they said, would you like to write a book? And I said, sure. And I knew there was no money in it. None. And I didn't know their MO. Their method is to find guys like me all across, it's brilliant by the way, all across the country who are very, very interested in their region. They have them write a book like this. And they know darn well that person's going to do all he can to push that book. And a lot of the legwork's taken away. They don't have to do too much. And I don't mind. You know, I got a book and everybody's talking about it. I even got a check once for, I think, $180. That was great. People are unaware. I'm fascinated with the 17th century and the 18th century here, and you heard right, the 17th century, 18th and 19th century. I know very little about the Fox cities in the 20th century, and the book kind of, aside from Joe McCarthy, it peters off as the turn of the century occurs. The 1800s here is a fascinating time, and I still haven't got over researching it, and I still haven't ended my writing about it. I'm about to launch a graphic type novel about certain characters I found, and an extraordinary connection, international connection that makes, what's that book everybody's, Dan Brown, what is that one called?
Da Vinci Code.
Thank you, how could I forget? Anyway, it makes a Da Vinci Code look small. And it happened right here. And it does involve religious relics At that time, people seem to forget this was the Wild West. But let's go before that. We are the Fox Indians. Why? Because of the Fox Indians, no one was more wicked than the Fox Indians. They were hated by all other tribes, and they were extraordinary. And I have a chapter here called Big Trouble on Little Lake Butamore, which is the story of the Fox Indians, and the name that we use so much on our businesses. And I'll read a little bit about them. A 1730 description written beneath a watercolor painting of a fox warrior who was captured and sent to France. Can you imagine that, captured here, right here in the Fox River, and sent to France? They are feared by all nations for their valor and speed. They're capable of going 70 miles a day without any food other than plants and leaves from the woods. Ever since they have been at war with the French, other Indian nations have been doing their hair in the fox style. So they were trendsetters. They were so badass that all the other tribes wanted to wear their hair like that. A fox warrior could split your head open with one blow from a spike-studded war club. Using a bow, he could launch 30 arrows into the air in the space of 1 minute. To male captives, he could be merciless. Unfortunate captives were often hung upside down and flayed open or slowly roasted on a spit. And why not, they argued, their enemies would do the same to them. Among the Fox, the religion of the Frenchmen failed to find any converts. They shouldn't have bothered. The religion of the Fox was as vivid and powerful as that of the Europeans. They would taunt the Jesuits, "Black robe, I will roast you alive and eat your brains." That's an actual quote. As the Fox defiance to the French increased, so did their reputation across the French colonial empire. They were literally known around the world. From the slave colonies of the Caribbean to North Africa, wherever Frenchmen were, they knew of the Fox. Louis XV was only 15 years old when the problem of the Fox Indians was brought to his doorstep in Versailles. Now think of that. The Fox Wars happened here. That's our war in Wisconsin. That's our battleground, and we had battlegrounds. Think of that. What was going on here in the Fox Valley swept the world in the early 1700s, and it was brought to Louis XV, who was then king of the greatest empire on earth. His father, the Sun King, passed away in 1715 at the age of 76. Louis was 5 at the time. His overactive mind, already exhibiting behavior that would make him the patron saint of all micromanagers, and I was thinking about him today, was completely fixated on the black and red painted demons that lived on a river in faraway Wisconsin. In 1725, a year that witnessed the first scalping of an Indian by a white man in Connecticut, a delegation of French allied tribes from the Illinois Confederacy, the archenemy of the Fox, made a long journey to France to state their case before the teenage king. Situated well to the south of the Fox homeland in central Illinois and Missouri, the Confederacy was in the midst of a full-blown war with the Fox, and it was not going well. Because of the insolent Red Earths, that's what they're called, the Red Earth people, the fur trade was slow and the business was down. Something had to be done. The leader of the Illinois delegation, Chief Chicago, made a promise to the king if the French would bring war on the Fox, he would personally teach the French soldiers how to scalp Fox warriors. These words must have delighted the young king. Of course, the Fox Wars ended tragically, and one of their great leaders, very great leaders, was exiled with his wife to the French penal colony of Martinique. He was left there with his wife, standing on the shore. That's the last anyone saw of him. The French ship receded, and the two little figures in the distance. Two people who were both born on the shores of Little Lake Butamore, right here.